Lousin, thank you so much for coming with us tonight.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Lousin, I've had a look at your LinkedIn profile, and it's pretty impressive. It says professional negotiator. I cannot start this podcast without you telling us, what does a professional negotiator do?
Yeah, well, it's a real job. And people often think about professional negotiators, about the Hollywood movies and this man coming in and solving all types of hostage negotiations. And although there are professional negotiators who work for the special forces, there are actually also professional negotiators who work for businesses, for companies. So that's what I do. Companies hire me in to help them with their difficult negotiations. So that can be either behind the scene or negotiate on their behalf or train the teams to negotiate better.
Wonderful. Sounds really exciting. So Lousin, tell us, what message do you want to give to our listeners tonight?
Tonight, I'm very happy to be invited by you to share a story, the biggest adversity that I am facing in life, and how through my negotiation skills, I'm going through that.
Wonderful. So tell us, Lousin, tell us about your story. Give us an in-depth chat about what you're currently going through.
Well, my career started in finance, so very analytical, very rational. I was working on trading floors of some investment banks in Europe. And then I moved to the stock exchange. So it was extremely high pressure, but also very rational. And then everything changed when I became a mother. My son Alex was born in 2011, and I slowly noticed that in order to be a good mom, you couldn't rely only on your analytical skills. There was so much more involved in the emotional intelligence world. So I started developing that. Obviously, when you become a parent, your heart opens to a new kind of a love, right? That we didn't even know we could feel. So everything was going relatively well. And then at the age of 6, the big bomb fell, where we were told that Alex has a progressive disease, a muscle disease called Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy, which literally breaks down his muscles. Then there is no cure. Life expectancy is short, and there's nothing we can do. So obviously, I mean, you're a parent, you can imagine if when that happens, it's just your world, it's just finished, right? You think, okay, this is it, this is the end. And that is literally what I thought. I could not imagine that after that, there would be a day where I would be happy again, where I would be able to smile again, where life would just continue again. Because after news like that, hearing that you're going to lose your child and there is no cure and there's nothing you can do, it's just, for me, it was the most devastating news that I've ever heard. And as a certified professional negotiator, I tried to negotiate with life. I tried to negotiate with God. I tried to negotiate a solution, like, please, not this disease. Please, not my child. Please, not this situation. And although I put everything on the table, I couldn't negotiate myself out of this. And that's when I realized, if certain things happen in your life that you can't negotiate, that you can't change, then what is it that you then can do? And that's when I learned that, okay, there's nothing I can do about the disease, but what I can do is how I'm going to live with that so that he still has a mom that is smiling and happy, so that his life can still be good. And that's when with my husband, we decided, you know what, there's nothing we can do about how long he's going to live, but let's then go all in on his quality of life, on how well he's going to live. And that's why we decided to move from France to Dubai. And the rest is history. So he's 11 now. The disease is doing its work. So it's breaking down his muscles. He can't walk anymore. He's in a wheelchair. We don't know how long he has, but he is having a great life. He's going to a great school. He has great friends. And I can honestly look myself in the mirror and say, this is the best life that I can give him. And he's having a great life. He's happy. And that's what, in the end, we want as parents. And through that journey, the biggest discovery that I made was at the moment where we moved from Paris to Dubai, and I was trying to find a house and buy a car and find the right school and the right physicians and the medical team. that was so heavy in a new country and in the extreme heat that there was one moment where I thought, I just can't do this. This is too heavy. I'm not that type of mom. I can't carry this. I cannot take care of a son that is, going to be disabled and is going to die. Like, how on earth am I going to do that? I simply am not strong enough. I don't have the shoulders to carry something like this. It's too much. I can't do it. And I was discussing that with my husband and trying to find a way out of this. And he said, you simply don't have a choice, because it's not only about you. It's not only about him. It's also about me. It's also about our daughter. So whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, this is it. You have to deal with this. And then something happened, Ciarán, something that gave me a sense of freedom, which might sound weird, but I realized, okay, I'm going to have to take care of this child with this disease, this condition, with the knowledge that it's only going to get worse. So then, since this is not something I chose, this is not something I wanted, this is not something I signed up for, what I can do is then I'm going to do it my way. So there was a sense of freedom of saying, you know what, we're in a new country. I'm going to do this exactly my way. And I'm not going to be inspired or dictated or impressed by how the world wants me to be. What is the right way of doing things? What is being a good mom? What is this? What is that? And I just pushed everything away and say, if I have to face this, which I don't want, then I'm going to do it my way. And then I decided, and something shifted in me. It was actually very empowering, because I all of a sudden was there like a blank sheet of saying, okay, this is life 2.0, and you have the pen in your hands and write it your way. Live life your way. Make the decisions your way. So that's when slowly, step by step, I started making different choices. I made like a cleanup in the friends that I had. I decided I only want to have optimistic people around me, positive people around me, empowering people around me. The movies I was watching, the books I was reading, the people I was surrounding myself with, it just became one massive shift of saying, I am running a marathon here, so I can only be surrounded by people who support me. So that is one of the things that I did. And then loads of other things where I started working on myself so much. I said, okay, I literally have to carry him one day, so I have to become stronger. So I started working out, which I had never done before. And as I always tell Alex, through your disease, we all became healthier. I became healthier. My husband became healthier. We started making radical shifts in the nutrition that we were giving him. Like we did everything, and we still do everything we can to slow down the progression and hopefully have him with us as long as possible. But all those changes are positive changes. And then by me sharing his story, be it on LinkedIn or in the media, it's making a positive impact on other people's lives as well. So here we are having one family that suffers, but through that suffering, millions that get inspired, that learn something, that look at their own lives differently, that look at their own suffering differently. So then you give it purpose. And that's what in the end then gives me strength to continue.
Lousin, thank you so much for sharing that. I can only imagine how difficult it is. Congratulations to you for being so strong and well done. And thank you for being so strong for Alex. I can only imagine how tough that news was. You mentioned, Lousin, about improving Alex's quality of life. What improved? What changed?
Well, when we have healthy children, we tend to be very focused on the parents that we wanted to be, the life that we wanted to have ourselves as children. This is very subconscious. And we tend to copy the education that we had, or go to the other extreme of not giving the education that we had because we suffered from it as children. And when you are dealing with a child that is going to die, all that disappears, because whether you want it or not, you cannot be the parent that you wanted to be. You cannot have the child that you imagined to have. You cannot do the fun stuff that you had in mind. I mean, I was dreaming of playing football with him and go cycling with him and swimming with him. All that is impossible. So then you can either become completely depressed, which a lot of parents do and is totally understandable. But you can also say, okay, how can I make his life the best possible, including all the things that we can't do? So, okay, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do that, and the list is very long. But then that also gives then a sense of freedom, because they're like, okay, then what's left? And we just focus on that. And also we live for now. Like we don't make big plans anymore. It's very short term, and we jump on every opportunity that we have. Before I used to think a lot about, can I do this? Can I afford that? And now I'm like, whatever, let's just do it. Money gets a whole other meaning. It's as if his life, and therefore ours, is compressed. And we often see this with people who, as adults, get the diagnosis of a fatal disease. That's when they start living. That's when they start realizing how beautiful life actually is. And I always say, I was actually blessed to have a warning from life, that life is short, that life is precious. Whereas you have so many people that die from an accident. And then the first thing I think is, oh my God, their parents, right? They didn't get a warning. They didn't know. They were assuming that they were going to die before their kids. And boom, and an accident puts an end to everything. And here I am seeing literally every day my son's health deteriorate, things that he could do that he can't do anymore. So it's like in your face every day that he's literally dying. His cells are dying. That's what's happening with this horrible disease. So then it's just a warning every single day. Enjoy life. Forget about things that don't really matter. Move on fast. I became like really an expert in moving on from situations, from people, from whatever hurt me. I just move on. I don't stay there for a very long time. But that also gives you a sense of like, it's a battle against life. Like, okay, you know what? Throw it at me. What else do you have? What else do you have? Because I became so strong at moving on and keeping the smile and saying, I have to be positive for him. It's, like you said, or people saying, Luz, how do you do it to be so strong? And my question is, how can I not be strong? It's not that I want to, it's not that I have a choice, but I want Alex to see me happy so that he can be happy. If he knows, senses, or feels that I'm unhappy, that I'm sad, children pick that up. So I don't have a choice but to be strong.
That's beautifully put, Lousin, and it's so admirable the way you're living life to the max. And, but I can't help but feel that it can't be easy, and that every day must be a struggle.
It is. It's horrible.
What do you do for you when you're having a bad day?
Well, that same blank page gave me the opportunity to think about this question. Like, what do I want in life? What type of woman do I want to be? What kind of work do I want to do? And having the courage to actually do it. So becoming a professional negotiator was something that, I wanted for years, and I had the degrees and I had the certificate, but it was in Dubai that I launched the activity. It was in Dubai that I partnered up with professional negotiators who had trained me years before, and we decided to work together. And then slowly I started sharing Alex's story in the beginning on LinkedIn, and then companies started booking me to speak about this, to motivate their teams. So, and I was like, yeah, why not? Let's try. And the first time I was extremely nervous when I shared Alex's story, and plus it was like triple reason to be nervous. First, I was sharing Alex's story for the first time outside of personal setting. Second, it was one of my best friend's company. So I was like, oh my God, I have to perform for him. And three, there were 900 people online. So the pressure was high. But Ciarán, it was amazing. I prepared for like a week, and I wrote a speech and I changed it. Whereas normally I don't prepare that much. I just go with the flow. But this one was so special that I prepared. And then the talk happened. And it was truly amazing. The feedback was amazing. The way I felt was amazing. And I felt like this big hand behind me, like I was being pushed, like, go do this. This is what you're meant to do. And then I remember it was in an evening, because it was in Europe. So it was evening here. And after that, I just couldn't sleep. I was so full of energy and excitement. I felt like I'm on a mission. I'm doing something that I'm supposed to do. And that is such a beautiful feeling. And I hope everybody gets to experience that at least once, because you just feel like all the pieces of the puzzle fit, I don't think it's a coincidence that I was given the talents to speak, to share stories, to be a storyteller, to be on stage, and at the same time, this sick child to take care of and love as much as I can. So when you bring those two together and I start sharing his story, it's really like, okay, God or life, I'll do whatever you want from me. If this is what was in the stars for me, then let's do it the best I can.
Wow, it sounds as if you were given a new lease of life, a new drive, and your commitment and your resilience to everything is really admirable, Lousin. And you mentioned your daughter and your husband. How has the whole experience been for them?
Well, it's something like this can literally make or break you, right? A lot of families don't survive bad news like this. And the percentages of divorce, I mean, with normal couple where there is no big catastrophe, the divorce rate is already 50%, right? Like 1 out of 2 couples, they don't make it. In families with a sick child, that percentage goes up to 80%. Why? Because the other is a constant mirror of your pain. The other is feeling the same pain as you are in the same intense way. And then there's so many things that you have to agree on the care, on the finances. It's such a strain on the family that it's not surprising that many marriages fail, or at least don't survive. Let's put it that way. So when I read about that the first time, I told my husband, I said, babe, we have to work extra hard to make this work. We owe it to Alex to stay together at least as long as he lives, so that we don't put that extra burden on him. Although obviously, in certain circumstances, a divorce is better than staying together, but we have to work extra hard to make this work. So it became also a kind of fresh air for the couple of saying, okay, then what kind of couple do we want to be? And the necessity of communicating constantly about his standard of care, about the appointments, about this, about that, made us, like, whether we want it or not, we have to communicate a lot. So we have to put time aside to sit together and say, okay, what do we with this? What do we do with that? But that also then allowed us to simply communicate a lot about ourselves, about our feelings. My husband is not somebody who talks a lot about his emotions. So I kind of helped him to do that, because you can't not talk about your emotions. This is too big to keep it in. But then, we're both different. We're two different people, and we process things differently. When we got the diagnosis, I went into action mode immediately. Like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? Because that is what gave me a sense of control, which you completely lose with something like this. And he was more in denial of, like, this can't be it, and I want a second opinion, and I want to talk to another doctor. Well, I was like, come on, let's do this and let's do that. So we had to kind of wait for each other, or and those are things you don't know when you haven't faced that. So we got to know each other even better, and we have to fight harder. But then again, that sense of blank page of saying this is life 2.0 also allows you to then have the freedom of saying, what kind of couple do we want to be, and what do we want to do? And we deliberately made the choices of doing things together, but also giving each other space to grieve in our own way. Because this disease, since it's progressive, there is a constant grief. Like, next month there's going to be a new thing that he can't do anymore, and then we have to grieve that. And then there's going to be a new thing that he needs, and then we have to grieve what he could do. So it's constantly that grief. And I have learned how to deal with my grief. I know that he deals with it differently, and I just let him do it his way. But it's work. It's hard work, and we have fights also, of course, like every couple. But we just have to be mindful that we're a team and we have to do this together. So, whether we like each other or not, this has to work. Well, thank God we love each other a lot, so that works. But it's work. It's work. And love, not only for us, but for everybody, love is action. Love is a verb. It's not something you love each other and then fantastic. Okay, no, that's where it starts. And then it's all the decisions that you have to make out of love and out of respect for each other, to let each other be, and at the same time have great teamwork. So for us, for example, we are very complementary in terms of skills. So I do more the research and understanding the clinical trials and what's happening, and I make the appointments with the doctors and communicate with them and negotiate with them when it's necessary. And he's more application based, and he gets things done. So I talk to the doctors, okay, we're going to give this medicine, and we're going to give that vitamin, and we're going to do that nutrition thingy. And then he's the one who actually buys it and gives it to Alex. So yeah, those kind of things. It's real teamwork. It's like running a company.
It sure sounds like it. And as you said wonderfully, any marriage or relationship takes lots of work, lots of commitment and teamwork. So putting this additional pressure just can't be easy. Your daughter, you mentioned your daughter, Lousin. It must be extremely difficult for her. Can you tell us a bit about how she's coping through this time?
Yeah, so she just turned 8. And I think she's only starting to realize now about how serious this disease is and that it's not something that will go away. And I can only imagine how hard it must be for her. We try to, communicate very openly about all this. We have told Alex about it. I'm very honest with Elise as well. I mean, I just tell her as it is, obviously in her language. But what was funny was, for example, 2 years ago, Alex started falling a lot, and we knew that we had to buy a wheelchair that would be more safe. And I was so nervous that first day when we were going to the hospital to try wheelchairs. But I told him, this is excellent. You're going to have a wheelchair. You're not going to fall anymore. This is fantastic, and you can choose the color, etc. And we go as a family. So the 4 of us, and Alex tries the wheelchairs and he picks one. And we're on our way home, and Elise starts crying. So I thought because she's sad or something. And she says, "What about me? I want a wheelchair too." I was like, what? I didn't see that one coming. And she was truly sad that she didn't have a wheelchair because she saw Alex drive around in this electric wheelchair with the joystick, and it was actually really cool. So she made a drama in that moment. I was like, I did not see this one coming. I am not prepared for this. I don't have energy for this. So we went to a store, with a toy store, and I said, let's find the Barbie in a wheelchair. Let's find a toy in a wheelchair. And then you get your wheelchair in a toy version, and then he gets his real one. But she was like honestly upset. Like, why does he get a wheelchair and I don't? And it's the same when he was a bit younger, and he could never really go up the stairs very well. So we used to help him up, and then she would look at us like, yeah, now carry me up. Why do you carry him up and I have to walk? So there was a lot of things that she was not understanding why he was different. That created some annoying and sometimes funny stories in the house.
Yeah, and it's a credit to her, and it's a credit to you and your husband for keeping everybody together and making your daughter Elise involved, because I'd imagine Alex gets lots of the attention, lots of the time, and it's very important that we don't forget Elise, and that and she's right. When my daughter gets something, my son wants something, and vice versa. So it makes complete sense.
Exactly right. For them, it makes sense. It's just for me, like, what do you want to do with the wheelchair?
That's it.
So yeah.
Lousin, you mentioned Alex's that he was deteriorating. Just for our listeners, where is he today? What's his physical state at today?
Yeah. So he got diagnosed when he was 6. At age 6, he could do everything. He could walk, he could run, he could go up the stairs, although he was going like one step at a time, which we found a bit weird, but then we understood. But then slowly, like literally one day he wakes up and he can't walk up the stairs anymore. He can still go down, but he can't go up anymore. And then one day, he falls and he can't get back up anymore. So that's when I had to tell him, I'm sorry, honey, you can't go outside and play alone anymore. And then somebody has to be constantly with you, because when you fall, you can't get up anymore. Whereas the day before, he still went alone and play football with his friends, So it's this disease, it's not like linear. It's like all of a sudden, boom, something else that doesn't work anymore. Until the day came where he couldn't walk anymore. And then last November, the day where he couldn't stand anymore. He asked me to lift him up so that he could go to the washroom. I lifted him up and he just couldn't stand. So that was it. So it's a constant new way, adaptation. If there's one thing I learned, it's agility, and quickly what I told you, move on and, grieve properly and then just move on, knowing that the next phase of grief is waiting for me anyway. So I don't even have the luxury to take the time to grieve because I have to live in between moments of grief. But yeah, so he's right now 11. He can't walk anymore. He can't stand anymore. He's in a full-time wheelchair, but he can still use his arms. I noticed lately that he has difficulties even lifting his glass to his mouth. So we bought very light glasses. So yeah, we're trying to keep him independent as long as possible, allow him to do stuff as long as possible, um, allow him to live his passion, which is football, everything surrounding football. And yeah, until the next phase. The next phase will be that he can't lift his arms anymore. Then we have to help him get dressed, which is already a bit the case. But then the worst part is that he's not going to have the strength even to breathe anymore. So he's going to need respiratory aid at night to get the oxygen. And one day, even by day, by having a mask or a tube. And then the final stage is when his heart gives up and says, I've had it. And then when the heart gives up, then obviously that's where it leaves us.
Thank you, Lousin, for giving us that picture of how it is. Lousin, for any listeners out there who's going through similar challenges, what would you like to say to them?
The number one thing that made a difference in my life 2.0, when facing this adversity, is when I started to talk differently to myself. When I started improving the relationships that I had with myself and allowing myself to make the mistakes, because we all make many mistakes, and specifically when we're going through adversity. So learn to forgive myself quickly, focus on what goes well, decide what kind of life I want despite this adversity. It's such an internal job because life takes something away from you. So you have the right to grieve. You have the right to see it as a loss. Even if it's not losing a person, it's still a loss of the life you had in mind. So whenever you're faced with adversity, I would say the number one thing, look at the person in the mirror and become friends with him or her, and sit down and have a peace negotiation with yourself, because the big, heavy luggage that you're carrying with you is not going to help you going forward. So we need to make that as light as possible. So grow through, therapy or coaching or whatever you need to have the guidance to become better friends with yourself and have a better relationship with yourself. Because when that happens, that becomes the standard of how you allow other people to treat you. And I promise you, you will attract better people who treat you better, who support you. And because the error we often make is think that we're alone or that this is unique. There are literally hundreds of millions of parents having a sick child. There are hundreds of millions of people who go through any adversity that you go through or that you will be faced with. So you're not alone. It's not unique, but you can create an environment where you feel supported instead of alone, because pain shared is obviously easier to carry than having to carry it alone. So yeah, different messages, I guess, but have peace negotiations with yourself and don't think you have to do it alone, because you don't have to. Very well put, Lousin. And I always say this to people I work with about the words being selfish. I encourage it. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. We have to put ourselves first. I actually said to my wife this morning about taking a break. If we put ourselves first, if we get ourselves in a good place, then we can serve and help other people. But if we're not feeding ourselves, then we're no good to anybody else. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And it's not selfish. It's selfish to want to be there for everybody else and then losing yourself in the story and then working yourself until a burnout and a depression and then not being able to help anybody else. Who are you serving then? I have to be so strong for Alex that I have to train myself mentally, physically, emotionally. And I take a lot of time for that. I mean, I have a personal trainer at the gym. I have a business coach. I spend money on becoming better day by day. And I have these monthly challenges with myself. And now I'm trying to go to bed early. All those things, anything I can do to become better so that I have the strength to deal with this, because it's heavy, it's hard. And there are so many days where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't handle it anymore. It's too painful. It's too hard. It's too heavy. But then another thing that can also help is, we tend to compare to other people who have it better, who have it easier. But what about just 1 minute comparing to people who have it worse? It doesn't make your life any easier. But me knowing that there are parents out there who have 2 children with this disease, who have 3 children with this disease, and who are still, doing it and doing the best they can. I'm like, okay, I only have 1. I have a healthy child. I owe it to them to be as strong as I can. And being strong also sometimes means going to my room and crying for 2 hours and saying, Mommy is not available. Like, leave me alone. that is part of strength, because that is part of giving me what I need. If that in that moment that is rest, then that is rest. If that means crying my lungs out, that's crying my lungs out. And there's no more judgment. I just go with the flow of, okay, what do I need? Take care of that need. And then what does the whole house need? And take care of them.
Really well put, Lousin, and a wonderful perspective. So for you, what is next for you?
Well, I love my job, so I hope that I'm going to grow in that. I hope that it will come more together, where I share Alex's story and negotiation skills and how those come together and how we can face adversity through negotiation skills. I hope one day I'm going to write a book. I hope one day I'm going to give a TED Talk. I have loads of ambitions.
Sounds fantastic. And for our listeners, Lousin, where can they find you?
Only on LinkedIn. I don't have a website. I'm not on Instagram, just LinkedIn, but I'm quite active there, so should be able to reach out there.
Very good. And we can put that on the details for the show notes. Lousin, thank you so much for coming on tonight to tell your story.